The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, Pete Mitchell here. We've got a really special podcast episode for you today. Peyton and I, just this last week, started a brand new program called the Bivo Inner Circle. If you haven't seen any of the information that we've put out on it, I'd encourage you to head on over to bivoinnercircle.com. And one of the things that we do on this program is twice a month we do a live mastermind call with everybody in the program. And Peyton and I answer your questions. Well, Peyton answers your questions on ministry, and I answer your questions on making money, being self-employed, getting clients, things of that nature. And we also had our very first call for that this last week, and it went extremely well. So Peyton and I decided that we would give you an insider look at what the Bivo Inner Circle Mastermind Call is like, and encourage you to head on over to bivoinnercircle.com and check out the program and see if it might be right for you. But I think you're going to get a lot out of this. It's just basically about the first half of the call. The second half of the call was really, really good, but that would have actually made a really long podcast. So we decided just to put the first half up, and I know you will enjoy it. Thanks so much.
So anyway, guys, so what we do on these calls is Peyton is here for obviously any of your church planning and ministry questions. I'm here for any of your business building questions. And typically, we've kind of got three groups that we're morphing over into this one group. So if you've been with us for a while, we've got Jump School Church Planter Training. We've got the Business Growth Consulting Group, and we've got the Bivo Inner Circle. And we're kind of blending those together into this Bivo Inner Circle because Peyton and I were talking about it, and we just came to the realization that, you know, so many of the people who are in ministry, they've got, you know, these two areas that they need help with. One is obviously the ministry side, reaching their community, effective evangelism, running their church. If they're on the church planting side, then obviously there's like every question in the world. And then there's also the other side where it's like, okay, how do I also make a living? And so that's why we've created this Bivo Inner Circle, and we're kind of morphing all three of these groups into this for the purpose of these calls. So we've got people at all different stages of their ministry, of their business, and so you're going to benefit by being able to hear everyone else's questions and the responses that we give them. So with that, Peyton, I'm going to let you kick us off and let us know if there's anything that you specifically wanted to cover here this morning, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A.
Yeah. Hey, guys. Good to have you all on here. I want to start out this call by thanking you guys for being here. I'm having a rough, just being real, which I think church planners are very good at. Just being real, just to say that, you know, my mom is in her final days, so I got that call this morning. I'm going to need to make it out back east. So, you know, just keep me in prayer since you're church planners and you have special magic prayers. Please pray for me. God kind of keeps it together for me in the next 24 hours and, 48 hours. But anyways, just really appreciate you guys being with us. I do want to also start by saying that Star Wars is way cooler than Star Trek. We need to get that established at the beginning of these calls and our relationship together. Otherwise, we may not be able to work together. And other than that, really, guys, just give you a little bit of my history. Some of you know my history, some of you don't. But, you know, I've been in all different types of ministry. So even though I'm kind of known as like a church planning trainer, my ministry didn't start out that way. I have been the interim of a mega church. I've been an assistant pastor. I think I've headed every ministry. In fact, it was funny because in one church I got demoted quite a bit. You know, that's another story. I've been through all that pain. But that kind of gave me they didn't know what to do with me because the church was in love with me. But, obviously there was a little bit of a leadership conflict, and it's since been worked out. I mean, you know, I have a really good relationship with, that pastor now, but we went through a rough time. We've since talked about it, and we've been humbly said, hey, this is how I would handle things differently. And both of us have kind of hugged and made up, but I made a whistle-stop tour I was a children's ministry director. I was youth pastor. I was, you name it, man. And, so anyways, just to let you know, youth ministry, that's how I got my start. I started at 19. I turned 44 next week. And, so I've been in ministry for 25 years. Got ordained in 1995. Wow. That's kind of trippy. And, have been in everything from a rural church. I've been bivocational. I've been in a traditional church. I've been in, Presbyterian. I've been in Baptist, Reformed Baptist. I've been in Calvary Chapel. I've done so many different, I sound like Trump now. I'm the best minister. Everybody knows it. Just ask anybody. I don't mean it to come off like that, like I'm the Trump of ministers, but the
please
bottom line is that,
please no.
Yes. And I have a secret relationship with the brethren. It's being probed right now, but anyway,
I hear you've got a connection to the Russian church, but I don't want to go into detail.
Russian, that's where I should have gone with that. Yeah, the Russian Orthodox Church. That would have been better. See, this is why I need Pete. But the bottom line is that I've done everything from like I said, a traditional, what they would call a heritage church, where you're in a historic church. I've been in rural church. I've been in metropolitan church. I've been in urban church. I've church planted. I've taken churches. So over those years, I've done team ministry. It's just to give you a breadth to understand, because you might be thinking, hey, Peyton's just a church planting guy, and that's what he knows. But I really want to start out by saying a lot of the things that I write, particularly when I say things like, hey, this is the way that it is, but, I'm looking at the New Testament, this is the way it should be. The reason why people go, oh man, that's exactly what I feel, is because I've been there. I've been in most of these contexts trying to make it work, trying to make things happen, and been as frustrated and, sometimes as clueless as everybody else. And so, that's kind of a little introduction. Don't want to say too much. Probably said too much, but that's where I've been. And, so hopefully with that breadth of experience, there won't be too much that you think, oh gosh, Peyton won't be able to. I've led student movements. I mean, gosh, I've accidentally planted churches in public space. I mean, on and on. So, most likely I'm going to have insight into whatever context that you are operating in.
Hey, awesome. And for like the one person on the call who doesn't know you had a book drop this week, I want to actually spend a few minutes on the call kind of talking about the book a little bit because of the message behind the book. And I mean, that's the whole reason that everyone is on this call. I mean, everyone on this call is in ministry in one way or another. Whether you are getting ready to plant, you've already got a church, you're bivocational, you are in ministry in one way or another. I mean, I had a guy reach out to me this morning. He's like, hey, I'm not planting a church right now. Do I qualify to join your Bivo inner circle? And I go, hey, look, I'll be straight with you. You got to be in ministry. And we've got people that are at all levels of ministry. I go, we've got ex-church planters who are licking their wounds. We've got and I started going through the list, and he goes, well, I'm definitely one of those who's licking his wounds. So, I mean,
most are.
Yeah, even when you're a quote unquote successful church planner, you're licking your wounds.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So, I mean, my point in that is, your book, which, is Raiders of the Lost Art. Give me the whole title, man. Now that I'm on the spotlight.
Yeah.
Your title.
So it's Reaching the Unreached, Becoming Raiders of the Lost Art.
There you go. By Zondervan.
2017.
Pick it up wherever finer books are sold, Amazon, everything.
I was waiting for
that. Let's kind of jump into that because, we're all here because we need to make a living. That's the whole reason that everyone is in one way or another. I was talking with someone earlier this week, and I go, the whole point of working is to make money. I mean, that's the only reason why people work is because we need to put food on the table. So we take jobs, whether it's working at Starbucks, working at the laundromat, fixing cars, selling whatever, insurance. We work because we need to make money, but everyone in this group is kind of unique in that, we need to make money, but we feel a call. So let's talk a little bit about your book, Peyton, if we can. And by the way, again, guys, if you've got a question at any time, go ahead and hit *2. That's going to raise your hand, and I'll pull you over into the call. But let's just start talking a little bit about your book. I don't want to ask your famous question, which we murdered on this week's podcast. Peyton, why did you write this book? No, but
that's such a good question.
Yeah, I know, right? Give us a synopsis of the book and the message that you're really trying to get people to wake up to.
Yeah, so it's funny because each time I've answered this question, I've been speaking like a bad boy. Like Preacher Peyton doesn't get out very much anymore. But I've been in San Diego, the Inland Empire, spoken with Stadia, and getting ready to speak to Acts 29. I'll be with Jeff Vanderstelt today. I'll be at my singing church tomorrow night. But each time so far, it's been different. And the reason why is this next book, Reaching the Unreached, is really kind of like my hidden operating system. And what I mean by that, it's like the iOS. If you rip me open, if I were an animatronic and you're looking at everything, or a Terminator, and you want to see what's underneath, this is like the endoskeleton. And I remember being at a conference where they asked me to come speak, and it was on the back of Church Zero, and that was my first book. And they were like, hey, can you come speak at this conference? And it was a good conference. A buddy of mine runs it. It's in Colorado. And it wasn't the conference that was a problem. It was me, because I had been, really, like just today, I posted a Facebook memory of this baptism we had that was super cool. And I feel like the more frontline you go, the more it jacks you up for ministry as you know it. There's a sense in which you can't ever return back to normal again. And so I remember just going to the first day of the conference, and I had a conversation with my editor, my acquisitions editor. He was there. His name is Don Pape. He was a guy that, signed Francis Chan, and he saw value in Church Zero, which speaks a lot for him. And at that time, I was talking to him about the fact that the book was getting rejected in every publishing house. And at that time, the proposal really had the Holy Spirit at the forefront. And the book's theory, the underlying theory that the entire book was built on, was that the more frontline you go, the more like Acts things become, more like the book of Acts it gets. And I unpacked the fact in one of the chapters that every time Jesus promises power or presence of the Holy Spirit, he ends up, linking it to mission. So, for example, Acts 1:8, you'll receive power from on high, then you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. Also in the Great Commission, he says, all authority has been given to me That's power. Therefore go, there's mission, and I'll be with you to the end of the age. There's a presence. So the power and presence of the Holy Spirit are always promised in connection with ministry. And I kind of draw out the fact that these are conditions, right? Like, you're not going to experience these things if you don't go. They are connected. So when you have a Christian who's kind of bored and says, hey, I don't get this whole Christianity thing, or they start slipping away or heading out the back door, they don't get church anymore, it's usually because they're bored and they're not doing what they're meant to do, made to do. We talk about unbelievers not doing what their Creator made them to do. Well, in the same way, a Christian cannot be doing what his Savior made him or remade him to do. And so that's kind of the premise of the book. But I remember that night at that conference, I was talking with Don Peyton the day, and I told him, and he said, Peyton, here's the thing that you don't realize. He goes, I know you. We've had dinner together. I've drawn out, I've asked you questions, and you've given me amazing stories. And he goes, Peyton, that stuff is so cutting edge that he goes, I just know I read a lot of books, I hear a lot of stories. And he said, but people need to hear that. People need to hear that the God of the book of Acts is still real and he's still around today. And he goes, I don't know how you put your proposal together, but if I'm not hearing, because as you could tell by the beginning of this conference, like I have no problem talking. I just don't like to talk about me very much. So I was always a sucky missionary. I'd go and I didn't want to talk about me. I don't want to tell my stories. It's like, well, I got stuff to say. I don't want to tell you like, hey, I'm Peyton Jones and this is what I did, now, and then Peyton did. I don't want to write a novel about myself. But when Don said that, I wrestled with it. And that night, there was a wrestling. What I've kind of couched this whole book as like a wrestling with the angel. Because what I feel with this book is that, it really was, it wasn't easy. Like Hemingway said, a writer just sits at the typewriter, he's asked, is it easy to write? And he goes, yeah, you just sit at the typewriter and you bleed. Like your life's blood, your essence just comes out when a book's right. But with this book, Church Zero was so right. It was just pent up. It came out of me. And this one, though, I felt like I was on holy ground. I felt like I was wrestling with the angel. I felt like some of my personality came through. Sure, it's got an Indiana Jones theme, and it's quirky and it's funny, but it also, there was points at which I felt this is holy ground. I need to take my shoes off. There was a reverence there, and I grew as an author in this book. I had to really wrestle with the times where my humor, Pete and I have this sense of humor. We think everything is funny. But there was a time at which God was saying, right, I need you to pay attention right now. And some of the things that I said in the book, like I would say that there's one chapter in particular. It's almost like for me, when I read it, it's like the Holy of Holies. It's a sacred chapter. I don't know how to put it. I'm not saying it's infallible or inspired by God or something heretical. I'm just saying that for me, I know that writing that was for me a holy moment. And it's actually about holiness and my theory of holiness. And you hear that knocked a lot. You hear people right now because they don't understand the connection, like in Titus 2, between grace and holiness. And they're still struggling to understand the grace of God. And I bring out the fact that, look, power is important. And Paul says, if you cleanse yourself from ignoble purposes, you will be equipped for every good work. There's an equipping. There's a power that happens when somebody's sanctified. There's an anointing. And I unpack that theologically a bit because we hear it, but people don't really explain it. And so what I do is I kind of talk about like a boxing match that you can go, 15 rounds in the boxing match. I mean, it only takes once being in an exorcism to realize, gosh, man, I really need a little bit more than what I got right now. I might need some extra power from the Holy Spirit. And there's a difference between going 15 rounds and knocking out in the first 30 seconds. And I've been in both scenarios. And so what I do is I unpack that a bit. But I really want for people to understand that, this is just one chapter. And again, I'm going a totally different direction than what I've spoken on, the previous 3 times so far in the last 2 days. But here's the deal. I want people to understand that, the cross is grace, but the resurrection is power. And we're called to live a crucified, resurrected life. And I feel like the church is still struggling to get the grace of God. And I think it's fantastic that that's the foundation of everything. I don't do anything. Sanctification has nothing to me to do with my salvation. It has nothing to do with God being pleased with me. I don't perform for Jesus, but I'll tell you what I do. Like Jesus, I sanctify myself for their sakes, that they might be sanctified. There's a sense in which I sanctify myself for mission because I want power. I want what Spurgeon had. When Spurgeon stands up in the Surrey Gardens Music Hall testing the acoustics during the 1857-1859 revival, and he's testing the acoustics in that music hall, and he says, "Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." And a repairman, elderly gentleman on the second balcony, is immediately, he hears that and he's converted. That's power, right? Just testing the acoustics in a room. And I'll sum up here so that Pete, I know we're not going to spend our whole time on this, but I laid awake that night in Colorado in a hotel room, unable to sleep, wrestling with the fact that I was being paid big money to speak to a room of about 1,000 Christians. And I couldn't get past the fact that what I was really being asked to do was entertain them. And it bothered me so much that I thought, I really don't want to speak to them. And when I got on stage, I said, I really don't want to speak to you today. And I literally said, because you're paying me big money, and most of you just want me to preach a good sermon, and I don't really have time for that. And I preached a sermon, I did, but my notes were scrapped, and what came out of it was the core of this book. And it was about mobilizing people. My whole talk was about getting people mobilized on mission. And I just opened up Acts 1, and I said, look, we've got this book, and the number one thing that Luke is telling us is you don't have the power. And I'm like, why do we have a room full of 1,000 Christians here just listening to messages all day? Why aren't we on our faces? Why aren't we crying out to God to reverse things? Why aren't we on our knees today? If you're who I think you are in this room, you're 1,000 leaders. Why aren't we praying? Like, why aren't we doing what they did in the book of Acts? We want to see what they saw in the book of Acts. Why aren't we doing what they did in the book of Acts? And that literally became the foundation of the book. And so, one of the catchphrases from the book is, if you want to see, and Alan Hirsch retweeted this week, and I was pretty blessed because he's on the similar wavelength. But if you want to see first century results, without first century practice, we will not see first century results. That was my mic drop, by the way.
Yeah, like it. Well, I mean, one of the things that I've shared on the podcast, and for those of you who are new, if you haven't been listening to the Church Planter podcast, it's probably been to your benefit, but we do hope to reverse that and have you as regular listeners of the Church Planter podcast. But I grew up in a Christian home. My father was a pastor my whole life. I'm a son of a Baptist, as we like to say. And I went
like a curse word.
Just like a curse word. I went to Christian schools all my life, graduated from Biola University, one of the most well-known and respected evangelical colleges. And for me, when all of this became real was after I met you and started going to the Long Beach church plant that we did. And before then, I can honestly tell you, I looked for any excuse to not go to church. Any excuse in the world, and I'm not going. I mean, my college days, I maybe went to church 6 times, over the 5 years that I was at Biola, maybe 6. I'm not even sure it was that high. Cause I'd been in the church my whole life. I could stand up there and preach to everyone exactly what I'd heard and what they were preaching, because it was the same thing. Like it never changed. It was not exciting. And when it became exciting is when we got on the front lines in Long Beach. And then it just became fun, like downright fun. Literally from, seeing the transsexual prostitute get into a knife fight with another homeless person. And of course, they didn't have any knives, so they had scissors. I mean, it just was like, wow, okay, this is happening right now. In the middle of service, by the way, not like at the end of service. I mean, literally in the middle of service, like, everyone's got to stop. We got to call the cops. Seeing demon-possessed people, or at least completely crazy people, and not knowing, okay, is this demonic or is this, they got some serious mental issues going on. It became real. And it became, like, you and I have talked about this, Peyton. It became one of those deals where it was like, you don't want to miss because you just don't know what's going to happen next. Yeah, and when you're on the front lines like that, you just don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, we had a pit bull bite the hand of our Sunday school leader. I mean, it was like,
what was it? The cross-dressing prostitute used the ladies' room. A pit bull bit our Sunday school teacher, and the guy made change out of the offering. I remember that day, and we were like, man, it's all a day, and all day's work in Refuge Long Beach.
Yeah, and I mean, oh my gosh, it was like, it became exciting, and that's honestly when everything for me became real. And even though, and I've said this before, I mean, since I was saved, and I absolutely had a real conversion when I was 5 years old. I look at my own son who's 5 years old, and I kind of wonder how much did I understand, but I know I had a real conversion back then. I've always known when I was sinning. I've always known when I was doing wrong. There was never like I didn't realize I was doing something that wasn't cool. Like, I've always known. It just never stopped me. Just because I knew it was a sin, it never stopped me from doing it. But everything became real when I got on the front lines. And I think for me, one of the reasons why I'm excited about your book, because if we can get more Christians to really kind of understand that it's not about just the pastor, and I realize everyone on this call is in ministry, but it's not just about them taking action. It's about mobilizing the person who right now is thinking this is a spectator sport, that thinking that going to church is all about showing up on Sunday, saying hi to the half dozen people who they consider friends, and then sitting down in a pew and letting someone talk at them for the next 30 to 45 minutes. But this is a battle, and one of the things that you've always said, Peyton, about Refuge Long Beach is that we were many people's last stop before eternity. And I mean, how many people did we have die after they got saved? And then within months, we're dead from who knows what. I mean, we had one guy shot by the cops. We had another guy overdose. I mean, we've had so much stuff. I mean, it was people's last stop before eternity, and that's what really for me got me excited about this. I mean, the whole reason that I do this whole Bible stuff and teach pastors, hey guys, here's the way that you can make money, is because it came out of the need for this. I'm sitting there looking at everything that pastors are doing. I'm like, man, we got to find a way for them to make some more money, because if they could do what I do, they'd have their time back, they'd have their family back, and they could make a decent living doing it. And so, I mean, I know I just kind of went off on a tangent there myself, but that's I don't know. That's my hope. My hope when people read your book is that they'll start to mobilize people and get them to start putting into practice what they say they believe.
Here's the thing too.
absolutely. And here's the thing too. You hit on something that's really important to me. And I know we talk about this because in Pete's line of work, he makes a lot of money, and that is kind of the bottom line. You're always looking at profitability. But one of the most God honoring things to me is I get disgusted when I'm looking around online and I'm like, this is obviously a way to get money out of people in the name of God, or a way to get money out of ministers, or, whatever. Like, there's a bunch of services out there you don't need. This did not come about from us sitting down and going, how can we make money off church planners? It was literally, it came.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Is there something you need to? But it literally came out of us going, because I remember Pete, we had this conversation. Pete's like, I don't know, because I can make so much more money doing what I do, but I got to help these guys, like I really got to help, like the burden for church planners. I do this stuff nonstop. It's just who I am, training them. I don't have the skill set Pete has with the consultancy. But it literally is a labor of love for you guys out there, man, to free you up to get out there with people, because otherwise you're not going to be able to reach people. I personally think that this is one of the most genius ways to maximize your time, to maximize your income, and minimize your time working, maximize your income, and maximize your exposure to lost people. And that's the sweet spot. Whenever you're church planning or ministering, you want those three factors to be at the right level. Otherwise, you're minimizing your, maximizing your time at work. You get minimal pay. And man, I've been there. I remember planting Starbucks, and the exposure to lost people was insane. It was almost unfair to the enemy, because I was planning a church out of that Starbucks. I remember at a certain point looking at Andrew and saying, hey, we're going to be here a little longer. I kind of need to make more money, because each month it was like, minimum wage was not cutting it. And, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's open up the lines. Star 2, if you've got a question or a comment, or you want to chime in on anything that we said, go ahead and hit star 2. That'll raise your hand, and I'll pull you over into the call. And don't forget, I know some of y'all, so I'll start calling on you, because, hey, David, come on. How can you not have anything to say? You're like Mr. Boxer. Oh, right. There we go. Hey, David, welcome to the call. Hey, David, first-time caller, long-time listener.
Yes, I am, and I tell you, you guys are amazing. I've never come across such important, valuable information. I wonder, can you help me grow my business and my church?
No.
Definitely not. Definitely not. That sounded scripted and canned. I don't know what to do with that. Pete, did you pay him?
I feel like it.
You know he didn't pay me. But he certainly invested in me.
There you go.
Peyton, it's good to hear your voice, man. I'm really praying for you and your family with your mother's
Thank you, brother.
circumstances. It's heavy. It's heavy on my heart.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome, man. I am actually one of the last 3 people in there's a company come to the country called Lidl. It's a German-based grocery store market chain like Whole Foods. They've come here to this area along the East Coast because they recognize the marketability of this region. And I'm actually in here filling out a job application because as a bivocational church planter, I've learned so much about my own value. And I didn't quite say this. I had to take my earplug out for a moment as you were talking, Pete, and I missed, I'm sure, a very important piece. But of what kind of prompted you to move into writing? I did not know the backstory of why you wrote the book, but that passion, that sense of urgency, And also, I'm going to say this a little bit. I don't know if this works for you, but the sense of contempt for how we see the church being unresponsive, the mainstream church being unresponsive to the needs of people. When you shared with you, that on stage there for a moment, I was so proud of you. And that you went ahead and preached, but at least you knew and they knew, what the deal is, that, there's a lot. I've had similar circumstances. I remember when I was in Texas at a Baptist convention, and I became so frustrated that, you got all this power here, supposedly power here, but yet there's no evidence of his manifested power working in the lives of people in the community. So,
it's funny because Pete and I were at a pastor's conference once, and I brought Pete. There's about 1,000 leaders, and we went to it together, and we were, pitching. It was our first year working together. We were pitching Church Planter magazine, and we were having these conversations. We were sitting at a table, and Pete almost stormed out because it was basically. It was just bragging about what they had and what they did, and Pete was disgusted, particularly by one individual who was actually really talking down to one of the guys next to him, who was, I guess you would say a smaller fish, and really disrespectful.
It was his assistant pastor. It was his assistant pastor, and he was totally belittling him in front of everyone at the table.
And then in another table, this was another meal. We're sitting there, and I just remember saying, like, hey, one of the guys was talking about expanding. He's like, look, they're building this new neighborhood. And I said, that if the church would stop following the white flight in its church planting and actually, buck the trend, get off of the white middle class trajectory and actually start going where the need is and not where the money is, we might actually start returning back to seeing what we saw in the first century or even in the Jesus movement. And everybody's eyes got big. There was this awkward silence. And what was awesome was there's a pastor there. He was from Watts. He was African American. And he just sat there and he goes, mm-hmm. Like, that's rad. But it was, again, it's this contrast where I often feel, there's that lyric that Bono had on his album, No Line on the Horizon, where he says, there's a part of me in the chaos that's quiet, but there's a part of you that wants me to riot. And I feel a little bit at times like a church reformer, rioting, against the fact that there are all these unreached people, and how dare we make it about what we get? Like, since I always think to myself, the litmus test would be Paul gets on the time machine and comes and visits and inspects our ministry. That to me is always the litmus test. What would Paul say if he turned up in my ministry? Would he say, oh man, Peyton, that is amazing. What about Wesley? What about these men that we laud as heroes and we praise them? Kind of like Jesus says, you build monuments to their name. But if they were alive today, you'd probably stone them. You would hate them. You would hate the William Booths. You would hate, and this is what I'm saying is God raises these guys up. And I bring this all up in the book. God raises these ministers that are radical who say, status quo ain't cutting it. Right? We're not reaching that. There are just vast swaths of unreached people. We need to go after them. And that's kind of the pulse. Anyway, sorry, I got back on my soapbox.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Well, hey, David.
Sorry, David, what was your question?
Yeah, do you have a question other than, can you tell me how to grow my church in 3 easy steps?
Debt steps, mind you.
Uh-oh. Hold on a second. Hey, David.
Did we lose him?
I might have muted him, actually. Oh,
he's screaming and raising his hand.
Hey, I'm sorry, David. I might have muted you. You're unmuted now.
Okay, I couldn't figure it out. Okay, cool. See, that's why I need those 3 steps. But I need 3 steps on how to operate a conference call. Peyton, no. Your soapbox really just, I think that's where I am. Another consultant planter asked me this morning, was I going to be on the call? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm in a place where it's almost like subversiveness is the strategy. I want to even move towards something one of the new Bible people said. I think his name is Joel. He made a comment about and Daniel about how to move towards reaching churches that are growing, and they're building and they're swelling up. They're swelling up because of this Christian nationalistic type of propaganda that's occurring right now. That's tied to political movement, and really, marketing to them, saying, how can I help you grow your church, so that I can really build my business, so that I can really establish kingdom agenda, which does not look like it's really kind of antithetical in some respects. It's viewed that way by what churches are doing. They're doing a lot of things like you were alluding to. It's like jumping on this bandwagon, moving their agenda forward. Everybody's doing the same thing. White flight moving, and not just white flight, but black flight too, moving away from the inner city, where the greatest need is for salvific events to take place. And the whole piece about holiness, the holiness piece is critical, and that is so missing from this. So Pete, I want to throw this at you, and Peyton, I want to throw this at you too. And maybe this is the right moment for it. I've been trying to see how I could present this. Pete put a question out the other day about how we could market maybe some aspect of our ministries in a more effective way that he could help us with. And I get my brain, I was like, well, how do I say this? But Peyton, because I was thinking about Peyton at the same time. Here it is, guys. Okay, so Peyton Pete, how can you help me be effective in my church planting efforts, kingdom agenda efforts, right? Through a model of prayer, seeking holiness, getting back to I facilitate these noetic meditative prayers, and I see, and spiritualization is high in our culture today. And everyone I talk to, even the other day I was at the gym, a young man came into the sauna and he starts meditating. But I asked him, I didn't know I've never seen anyone else meditating here but me. And he says, yeah, I really don't know what I'm doing, but so I teach him really quickly on how to do a Latino Divino, how to pray the scriptures, how to meditate on the word. And I'm seeing God move in that area, but I don't know how to take it to the next step to market it in a way that it can actually become something. I believe what God wants to do is bring people back to a place of prayer where we actually learn to hear his voice and operate from that. Now, I think you got a good feel for what I'm saying. What do you think, guys?
Well, I think for me now, I think writing a book is the best way. If you were thinking, hey, I want to monetize this, you write a book. You could even start a course. But I also think that there's, I'd be interested to hear Pete's take on this, because I think you have to be really careful when it comes to spiritual disciplines. For example, remember that Simon the Magus came and said, hey, I want to buy this power of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Yes.
And Peter said, hey, man, your money, perish with you. I mean, Peter was like, no, this ain't happening. So I think you need to be careful. Writing a book, I think, is the only legitimate way to kind of, and you could do a course on spiritual disciplines, and I think it's slightly different, because what you're doing is you're asking the person to make an investment of time, really. That's the course for a book or even an Audible. You're sharing your wisdom, and you're putting it in a form that's an accepted format to do that with. You can also coach people, like, for example, mentoring. A buddy of mine wrote a book on prayer, a guy named Adam Statmiller. When I was doing something called Train Station, Church Planning Train Station, I introduced that book, and because Adam is local, one of our guys sought him out and said, "Will you mentor me? And I'll even pay you for your time because I know you're busy. But will you be my prayer mentor?" And that was how it worked. But like I said, I think on a mass scale appeal, like, you know, it's basically it's kind of like certain things that you got to be careful with that probably shouldn't go together. Like Pete will always say, Amway and church. Just no. Right? Just no. And I think that, I just think that there's certain, you have to be extremely careful with this because, you know, part of our jobs as ministers, this is just what we do. Like, we're just going to try to get our people to pray. If we teach our people to pray, what I think is really powerful is the way that Ying Kai came up, and there's another guy named Steve Smith. They came up with this way of training people to share the gospel, and it became so organic that that's what's taking Southeast Asia by storm, in the underground church and in the factories all throughout China with the mass migrations of people that move every year around. That is something that it doesn't require money. It's purely organic, and it's easily transferable. It's just basic. You know, what they do is they have people share their testimonies, right? So they would share their testimony. So I'm going to go back to the guy in the sauna. They would share their testimony. So they'd be working in the factory, and they would say, "Hey, you know, what's your story? How did you get here? Do you have kids? You know, really, where did you grow up?" And they would get the people to tell their story, and then they would say, then they would earn the right really to be heard to tell their story. And of course they would share their testimony. And that would just, Ying Kai would teach them how to lead people to Christ through that. And testimony is so powerful that it's just it's a no-brainer, right? It's an amazing tool. So that said, in the sauna, what I would do if I were in that situation, and this is something God has really been teaching me over the years, and I don't model this on these calls. I don't model this in anything we do because it's a podcast and, you know, it's just talking. But when I'm talking with non-believers, I question them a lot. I ask a lot of questions. I'll say to the guy at the sauna, how do you meditate? What does that look like? Oh, I see. Okay. And then I'd let him talk a bit and I'd ask some good follow-up questions. How does that make you feel? What does that do for you? What do you struggle with? You know, a lot of the questions that I guess you would ask as a consultant, really, you could actually apply a lot of that because you're probing, you're agitating the problem, and then you're going to say, let me share with you what I've found. And then you start bringing into it. And then the next follow-up, if I can, always with a non-believer, I will pray with them. I will always pray with a non-believer if I can. And I'll say, hey, would you like me to pray for you? You know, I'm going to ask God to bless you. I'm going to, you know, and 9 times out of 10, people say, okay. And particularly with a guy like that, you've got a real open door. He's probably going to be a little scared because he believes in it. And he's not quite ready to encounter God. We underestimate the power of that. But yeah, does that kind of answer your question?
It does. And I did that. I actually meditated with him. I just put my music on, my music, and I prayed with him. First, I walked him through the process, prayed with him. Didn't ask him too many more questions. When we left the sauna, he came up to me and he wanted my information. He wanted to continue. He wanted to know when I'll be back. We exchanged information. And as I'm thinking, as you're talking, I need to let you know that the weekly creative writing workshop, Peyton, you know, that was a key portion of what I instilled into the group, was why meditation would help with creative writing. Well, this second cohort has so much, you know, embraced it that I asked them for testimonials to put on I was going into a ghostwriting phase with the business, and asked them for testimonials, and every testimonial made reference to how the meditative piece of it, because we meditate before and we meditate after, has transformed their creativity. So so I see how, and I didn't even really intend for that to be the heart of it.
Yeah.
But because I wanted to use it on the business side, but that seems to be what they really wanted to extol. So I'm seeing
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, I want to take that, and now Pete put that together with some type of path. I understand what you're saying totally about it being, I need to say this, there's a group that I facilitate, right?
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So you're saying as really a way to have people almost as a funnel for people, like what we used to do. We used to do groups where we would say, hey, if you want to get to know the Bible, and because we're out of I've told this story before about the group that we did, getting to know the Bible, and they were all non-believers. And they sat there the first night and hijacked the whole thing. We're like, it's a bunch of rubbish and blah, blah, blah. But they every single, well, no, not one of them. One of them ended up not getting saved. But out of 7 people, that's powerful. So I get where you're going. Yes, you could do that. And I'd be more than willing to maybe take some time with you just on a one-to-one call and chat through some ways that you can make that pop and make that happen.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, we've got a lot of hands raised, so I'm gonna keep this train moving. Let me go over here to Carl. Carl, I got your line unmuted.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, can you hear me, guys?
Man. Yeah.
Good. Listen, I apologize because I found you guys while I was on vacation, and I started with this whole thing while on vacation. So forgive me, I'm with my kids. I'm at the beach, but I wanted to listen in and ask a question.
Yeah.
My question is this. We have more of a traveling ministry. My kids are in a band called Young Heart, and we basically just travel, sharing the gospel, wherever the doors are open. A lot of times that's in churches. Sometimes that's in a laundromat, a bowling alley, or whatever it is. But one thing we've noticed is that everywhere we go, people have asked us to do seminars on parenting. And marriage too, but mostly for parenting because we have 5 kids, and they just kind of feel like they're not getting as much help as they would like for raising raising godly kids in a sinful world. So my question to you is this: do you have any modules or any training at all on how to develop, whether it be a coaching ministry or like a course?
Carl, that's a great question, and that's one of the things that I was bringing up to the Voxer group earlier this week. The next course that I'm basically working on is how to create primarily an online curriculum that you can, sell to other pastors or churches, basically the Christian realm, if you will. And part of the reason for that is we've had a lot of pastors who are in the group. Like we've got Ed Choi, who's on the line right now, who's got a course teaching pastors how to do a couple of things. One, how to make extra money as a wedding officiator, and he's also reaching the unreached in his area, people who wouldn't normally come to church. And so it's kind of a 1-2 punch. They'll actually talk to a pastor because they need to get married, and he uses that as a way in to share the gospel. So he's got a whole course on that. And so that's actually the next program that I'm putting together that everyone in the Bible Inner Circle will have access to. Is here's how you create the course, how you do the deliverables, and then, of course, how you sell it. Parenting, by the way, it's a mixed topic. It's a tough one to do. However, it's a very powerful topic, and there's not a lot of people in that space, and there's not a lot of people, especially in the Christian realm, in that space. So, I mean, if you already got kind of like a backbone curriculum in your mind, even of what you would cover in that. What I'll be showing you is here's how you take that and turn it into an actual course that can either be taught live or we do some things over boot camps, like a 2.5 day boot camp. Or my preferred method is online just because of the the ease of doing it online. You know, you don't have to go somewhere and spend 2.5 days out of your life delivering the content, that kind of thing. So we're going to actually be putting that together. That's the next course that I'm working on. So, I mean, I would love to hear from you personally. Just tell me, hey, you know, these are my big questions when it comes to putting something like this together. So that way I can address those for you.
That would be great. That would be great. If you need someone to be a beta test, I'm willing.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
cool.
that'd be good.
Thank you, guys.
That'd
God
be really
bless
good.
you. I appreciate what you guys are
no
doing.
problem, man.
Really, it came at a perfect time. I've been praying about this, and Pete reaching out and following up, I just take it as a blessing from the Lord. So may God bless you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Hey, Carl, looking forward to getting to know you, man, and really excited that you're here. And I think that question is really good. It's funny enough, I just sent Pete a screenshot of something I saw that was regarding marriage, and I was like, I was sending it to him to say, hey, we need to do something like this. So
you want to know something?
I just celebrated 20 years.
One of my buddies wanted to do a course on marriage in the Christian community. And it's a true story, man. He talked to his wife, and he came back to me later, and he goes, my wife doesn't think I should do that course.
Yeah, you know, Andrew and I have been talking about doing a podcast, and what did we call it? Marriage Partners in Crime, I think. Ministry Partners in Crime, I think is what we call it. Or I can't remember. We had, that's probably not it. I can't remember what it was called, but we came up with a cool name for it. And we actually recorded the first episode. And,
nice.
We're looking at doing this just like a 30-minute show, us talking through different issues of being married in ministry and how you make it work, and Andrew and I have always been in ministry together. So, but yeah, it'd be good. Going the distance is hard, man, and you learn things along the way. So I thought, Carl, that was a very insightful question. I think both in business and ministry, you can sacrifice your family, and you don't have to. Like, that's kind of the cool part about it. Neither Pete nor I, we're family men. And I know Pete will not, because he will not think of himself that way. But both of us, at a certain time of night, we're done. It's family time, you know? That's it. I don't work through the night anymore. I don't work till 10, 11 o'clock, unless I've taken the first part of the day off and I go to work at 2 because I've been at my daughter's assembly or been out with it, you know, doing something stupid with the family, you know.
All right, next call we got here, hand raised. It doesn't say the name. I'm wondering if it's Charlie. I'm not sure because it says it's coming in from La Habra. So
it's Charlie's hair.
Yeah, it is Charlie's hair. So tell us who you are and what your question is.
Yeah, it's me, and I do have my hair with me today. So
I want to speak to the hair. Let me talk to the hair. The hair has the power.
He's a little embarrassed. He's a little embarrassed these days because he's going whiter than he used to be.
Hey, the frosting look just makes him look better. Yeah, exactly. It just, if you guys don't know, Charlie has the best head of hair on the planet. And for a guy like me, I notice stuff like that. There's 2 things I notice in people: how tall they are and what their hair's like. And Charlie just has hair that would turn a straight man gay. There, I said it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go there.
Oh my gosh. Great. And I was thinking I didn't have to edit this call. Now all of a sudden I do.
I don't know how to answer
Charlie
that.
is my church planning partner. Yeah. Charlie and I go way back. He was my church planning partner in Refuge Long Beach. So he's also a client.
Yeah, I really don't know how to answer that. Since you and I spent a weekend in a 400 square foot trailer, I'm a little afraid now.
Hammering out our Constitution and bylaws, which, funny story, when I sent it to Charlie to look over, I laced it at the final edition. I laced it with bombs. So there were little things I snuck in there that were like little bits of heresy. And one of them was about, 2 men, you know, gay marriage. And I flipped it, you know. And so when Was it you when you took it to the bank, or was it someone? I can't remember who it was.
No, I didn't take it to the bank, but yeah, somebody
took it to the Evangelical Credit Union with the, not catching the mistakes, or the intentional bombs that were laced throughout it. Because Charlie and I have a wicked sense of humor, and it went, we got a call from the bank. So that was funny.
They didn't want to give you an account. And then you had to explain to them, it was actually a joke.
We've since patched up our relationship with Evangelical Credit Union, though they sometimes still raise their eyebrows when I go in. But anyway, hey, I just wanted to comment on David. Peyton will not teach you how to grow your church. As a matter of fact, if you catch him on the right day, he may preach a sermon that will shrink it. And that's intentional.
Very true.
Long story behind that, but yeah, it's one of those eat my flesh and drink my blood sermons when you got too many freeloaders in your church plant that you need to jettison. But that's another long story.
Yeah.
But hey, just wanted to chime in and hey Pete, did you see that I had your back yesterday when you had some people giving weird comments about your ad on Facebook?
I actually just saw it this morning, and I was like, normally I would erase the comment, but Charlie handled it so well and brought the guy back around. I was like, I might actually leave it. It might actually help the ad. So thank you very much, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, it's one of those where somebody makes a comment when they obviously don't know what the ad is about, right? I mean,
and that never happens with pastors, ever.
I think they mistook your ad for a health, wealth, and prosperity, how to get rich by being they obviously don't know anything about church planning if it's about getting rich. But right, that's why we need Pete.
As I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, this was just the first part of the mastermind call that's available to all of our Bivo Inner Circle members. If you'd like to find out more about this program, head on over to bivoinnercircle.com, and you can check it out there. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode of the Church Planner Podcast. Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planner Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planner Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplannerpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planner Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplannermagazine.com.